The 1960s were a golden era for American performance, a time when Detroit unleashed a fleet of muscle cars so fast and so fierce they could outrun even the most prestigious Ferraris of the day. From stripped-down factory drag racers to street-legal brutes packing massive V8s, these machines embodied raw power, affordability, and unrelenting speed. Number 30. 1962 Chevrolet Impala SS409. The 1962 Chevrolet Impala Supersport 409 was the car that put Chevrolet firmly into the muscle car wars, and it did so with a soundtrack that became immortalized in American pop culture. When the Beach Boys sang, "She's Real Fine, My 409, they weren't exaggerating the thrill of a big block V8 that was factory rated at 409 horsepower, a neat symmetry that only added to its mystique. In its era, Ferrari drivers were used to winning admiration for their exotic styling and high-revving V12s. But when it came to a stoplight duel, the Impala SS409 could shock them with brutal torque and surprising speed. A showroom stock version, on standard tires, was capable of a quarter mile in just over 15 seconds at about 90 miles per hour. But in the hands of drag racers, with little more than tuning tricks and a pair of cheater slicks, the 409-powered Impalas dipped easily into the low 13s, which was faster than many European supercars of the early 1960s. The Impala itself was not a lightweight car. It was a full-size machine with ample chrome, long body lines, and a comfortable interior that could seat a family of 5 without complaint. Yet under its elegant exterior lurked a big block engine with dual 4-barrel carburetors and a reputation for smoking rear tires the moment the clutch was dropped. It was the contradiction that defined the muscle car spirit: practicality on the surface, performance underneath. The 409 engine gave Chevrolet credibility on drag strips across the nation, where quarter-mile times mattered more than European handling finesse. Against a Ferrari 250 GT or even the early 3-liter 250 GTO, the Impala SS409 had no business being competitive on a racetrack with curves. But line up at the drag strip, and the story flipped. The Ferrari driver, with his precision-crafted gearbox and singing 12-cylinder, would have been humiliated by the sheer wall of torque unleashed by Chevrolet's big block. That was the essence of 1960s American muscle, straight-line performance, so raw and unapologetic that it could embarrass the world's most pedigreed exotics, with nothing more than cubic inches and brute force. Number 29. 1967 Chevrolet Corvette L88 427. The 1967 Chevrolet Corvette L88 was a car that existed almost in secret, hidden behind understated advertising and dealer whispers, yet it became one of the most ferocious machines of the muscle car era. Only 20 were built in that model year, and each was fitted with a racing-bred 427 cubic inch V8 that General Motors deliberately underrated at 430 horsepower. In truth, dyno sheets proved it was capable of producing well over 500 horsepower right out of the box, making it one of the most potent engines of the entire decade. Chevrolet did everything possible to discourage casual buyers. The L88 package deleted a radio and heater, included a stiff competition suspension, and was offered only with premium fuel requirements that made it impractical for everyday use. Yet for those who understood what it represented, it was a factory-delivered race car disguised in Corvette clothing. On the drag strip, when paired with the right tires and gearing, the L88 was capable of mid-12-second passes, and with minor tuning, racers were soon recording quarter-mile times in the low 11s. What made the L88 truly special was the combination of its lightweight fiberglass body and its monstrous power delivery. In an era when Ferraris like the 275 GTB and 330 GTC were considered fast, with quarter-mile times in the 15-second range, the Corvette L88 was an entirely different kind of predator. Against such competition, the American machine didn't just win, it embarrassed them, leaving exotic Italian cars fighting to catch up as the big block roared through the traps at more than 115 miles per hour. The L88 became a legend precisely because it was so rare, so extreme, and so unapologetically built for speed. Its place in history is secure as one of the most desirable Corvettes ever made, but in its day, it was simply the quickest and most dangerous thing you could buy with a warranty. In a straight-line contest, few cars on Earth, Ferrari included, could hope to keep up. Number 28, 1963 Ford Galaxie 427 Lightweight. The 1963 Ford Galaxie 427 Lightweight was a purpose-built missile designed not for comfort or luxury, but to dominate the quarter mile. Ford engineers stripped hundreds of pounds from the already big-bodied Galaxie by replacing steel panels with aluminum, swapping in fiberglass hoods and fenders, and even using thin-gauge glass to save precious weight. Beneath the hood sat the dual-quad 427 cubic inch high-riser V8, conservatively rated at over 400 horsepower, but easily capable of far more. In stock trim, the lightweight Galaxie tipped the scales around 3,400 pounds, remarkably svelte for a full-size car of its day. The payoff was immediate on the drag strip. With skilled drivers like Gas, Rhonda, and Dick Brannon behind the wheel, these factory specials consistently turned low 12-second quarter miles, with some recorded passes as quick as 12.1 seconds at nearly 120 miles per hour. At a time when Ferraris were celebrated for their 12-second to 15-second quarter-mile performances, the Galaxie's brute force made it a clear winner in straight-line contests. What made the lightweight Galaxie legendary was its sheer audacity. It wasn't a sleek sports coupe with refined handling, it was a massive American sedan with the soul of a dragster. Lined up against a Ferrari 250 GT at a stoplight or strip, the Italian would barely get out of second gear before the Galaxie had already crossed the traps. Its torque-heavy launches and relentless acceleration humiliated cars that cost 3 or 4 times as much, proving once again that Detroit's recipe of cubic inches and lightweight construction could deliver staggering results. The 1963 lightweight program was short-lived, largely because of its exclusivity and the expense of producing such specialized cars. Yet in that brief moment, the Galaxie 427 Lightweight etched its place into history as one of Ford's most formidable factory-built drag machines. Against Ferrari, it wasn't just competitive, it was devastating, delivering a clear statement that America's muscle era had truly arrived. Number 27. 1969 Ford Torino Talladega 428 Cobra Jet. The 1969 Ford Torino Talladega was born out of necessity, crafted to give Ford an aerodynamic edge in the cutthroat world of NASCAR, but it also carried serious straight-line credibility for anyone lucky enough to buy one of the 500-plus street versions built. To homologate the car for competition, Ford modified its mid-size Torino with a reshaped front end that extended nearly 6 inches, smoothed the body lines, and added a flush grille and rocker panels for slipperier airflow. These changes made it a menace on the superspeedways, but the secret weapon under the hood was the mighty 428 cubic inch Cobra Jet V8. With 335 factory-rated horsepower, an intentionally understated number, the Talladega could deliver brutal acceleration despite weighing nearly 4,000 pounds. Contemporary tests with the right axle ratio recorded 0 to 60 in under 6 seconds and quarter-mile times as quick as 13.2 seconds at over 106 miles per hour. That was the kind of performance that made Ferraris of the late 1960s, often stuck in the high 13 to 15-second quarter-mile range, look almost pedestrian. For the price of a modest family car, buyers got a machine capable of humiliating exotics, costing 3 or 4 times more. But the Talladega was more than just a straight-line brute. On the high-banked ovals of NASCAR, it became a legend, part of the Aero Wars, where Ford battled Dodge and Plymouth for supremacy. Its clean aerodynamics and strong engine allowed it to reach speeds well over 150 miles per hour, and on the street version, that same DNA translated into a car that could storm down the quarter mile while still cruising comfortably on the highway. Today, the 1969 Torino Talladega stands as one of the rarest and most historically important muscle cars of its decade. It wasn't just about styling or luxury, it was a purpose-built weapon that could dominate both the drag strip and the racetrack. Against Ferrari, it represented the rawest form of American ingenuity. Brute force, aero efficiency, and cubic inches, delivering the kind of speed that left European thoroughbreds gasping to keep up. Number 26. 1969 Mercury Cougar Eliminator 428 Cobra Jet. The 1969 Mercury Cougar Eliminator was Ford's way of showing that performance could be dressed in a tailored suit, combining muscle car speed with a touch of luxury refinement. The Eliminator package gave the Cougar bold striping, a front air dam, a rear deck spoiler, and a performance attitude that separated it from the standard models. But the real magic came when buyers checked the box for the 428 cubic inch Cobra Jet V8, particularly with the Ram Air induction setup. This engine, underrated at 335 horsepower, was a torque monster that turned the Cougar into a straight-line terror. Period road tests showed that the Eliminator 428 Cobra Jet could storm through the quarter mile in the high 13-second range, often around 13.9 seconds at just over 100 miles per hour. That kind of performance meant the Cougar was capable of running neck and neck with Chevrolet Camaros, Dodge Chargers, and even surprising European sports cars that carried far higher price tags. A Ferrari 330 GTC, for example, often needed more than 15 seconds to cover the same distance, meaning the Mercury could leave it in its wake at the drag strip. What made the Cougar Eliminator unique was its dual personality. Inside, it offered a more refined cabin than its Mustang cousin, with extra touches of comfort and a smoother ride quality that appealed to buyers who wanted performance without sacrificing class. On the outside, however, the car carried itself with an aggressive stance, complete with bold colors like competition orange, that made it look every bit the street predator it was. It was a muscle car that could look at home in a business district, yet roar to life as soon as the light turned green. The 1969 Mercury Cougar Eliminator 428 Cobra Jet proved that muscle cars didn't have to be bare-bones street brawlers. They could be sophisticated, stylish, and still blisteringly quick. Against Ferrari, it showed that raw American displacement could overcome exotic refinement, delivering a statement in every quarter-mile pass that performance wasn't limited to Italy's prancing horses. Number 25. 1969 Buick GS 400 Stage 1. The 1969 Buick GS 400 Stage 1 proved that luxury and muscle did not have to live in separate worlds. While Buick had a reputation for building refined and comfortable cars, the GS Stage 1 package introduced true performance credentials to the brand's lineup. Beneath the hood sat a 400 cubic inch V8, underrated at 345 horsepower, but delivering torque figures that rivaled bigger engines of the era. The Stage 1 option improved the cylinder heads, camshaft, and valve train, creating a power plant that came alive the moment you pressed the accelerator. Despite its upscale image, the GS 400 Stage 1 was fully capable of holding its own against the roughest muscle cars of the period. Magazine tests at the time recorded quarter-mile passes around 14.1 seconds at about 100 miles per hour. With better traction and minor tuning, owners found themselves dipping into the low 13s, which meant they were suddenly within striking distance of the best Dodge Hemis and Chevrolet big blocks. In straight-line contests, this Buick could easily outrun Ferraris, such as the 330 GTC, leaving behind a trail of burnt rubber and shattered European egos. What made the GS Stage 1 especially appealing was that it delivered its performance without sacrificing comfort. Inside, drivers were treated to plush seating, quality materials, and Buick's hallmark refinement, creating an experience far more polished than many stripped-down muscle machines. Buyers could choose automatic transmissions, power steering, and air conditioning, all while still enjoying the brute force of a muscle car that could tear down a drag strip. It was a gentleman's muscle car, perfect for those who wanted to dominate a quarter mile yet arrive at the country club in style. The 1969 Buick GS 400 Stage 1 may not always be the first name mentioned in muscle car lore, but it deserves recognition for proving that raw speed could coexist with sophistication. Against Ferrari, it embodied a different philosophy: comfort, elegance, and relentless American torque, delivering a combination that European exotics simply could not match at the drag strip. Number 24. 1969 Oldsmobile Hurst Olds 442. The 1969 Oldsmobile Hurst Olds 442 was one of the boldest collaborations between a factory and a performance tuner, combining Oldsmobile's refined muscle car with Hurst's flair for speed and style. At a time when GM's corporate policy restricted engines larger than 400 cubic inches in mid-size cars, Hurst found a way around the rules by installing Oldsmobile's massive 455 cubic inch V8 under the hood. The result was a street machine rated at 380 horsepower, but its real output was closer to 425, making it one of the most powerful factory-backed cars of the era. On the strip, the Hurst Olds was a legitimate performer. Motor Trend tests in 1969 showed 0 to 60 in just under 6 seconds and quarter-mile runs around 14 seconds flat at just over 100 miles per hour. With tuning and stickier rubber, owners were dipping into the low 13s, which placed the Hurst Olds squarely in competition with Mopar Hemis and Chevrolet big block Camaros. Against Ferraris of the time, which often struggled to break into the mid-14-second range, the Oldsmobile could simply walk away in a drag race, leaving Italian sophistication trailing behind in a haze of American torque. The Hurst Olds also carried a distinct personality thanks to its styling. Each car wore cameo white paint with Firefrost gold accents, along with a functional fiberglass hood scoop called the mailbox due to its prominent size. Inside, Hurst added unique badging and, most importantly, the famous Hurst dual-gate shifter, which allowed drivers to run the automatic like a manual for maximum control during high-performance runs. It was a car that looked as aggressive as it performed, yet it still retained the comfort and refinement that Oldsmobile customers expected. The 1969 Hurst Olds was built in limited numbers, adding exclusivity to its already potent formula. It represented the perfect marriage of American muscle and aftermarket ingenuity, proving that a factory-backed collaboration could bend the rules and deliver one of the most memorable muscle cars of the decade. Against Ferrari, it stood as a defiant statement. Brute displacement and raw power could conquer even the most pedigreed exotics when the race was measured a quarter mile at a time. Number 23. 1969 AMC Hurst SC Rambler. The 1969 AMC Hurst SC Rambler was one of the most colorful and audacious muscle cars of the decade, proving that even America's smallest automaker could throw a serious punch. Built in partnership with Hurst Performance, the SC Rambler took the compact Rambler Rogue and transformed it into a drag strip-ready warrior. Its patriotic paint scheme of red, white, and blue stripes and graphics made sure it never blended into the crowd. But beyond its flashy appearance, this car had the muscle to back up the attitude. Under the hood was AMC's stout 390 cubic inch V8, officially rated at 315 horsepower. With a 4-barrel carburetor, free-flowing exhaust, and relatively lightweight body, the SC Rambler delivered startling performance. Factory advertising boasted quarter-mile times around 14.3 seconds at about 100 miles per hour, and real-world tests confirmed it could easily dip into the low 14s with the right driver. That meant it was every bit as quick as a Pontiac GTO or Chevrolet Chevelle, and more importantly, it could leave many European sports cars, including Ferraris of the era, struggling to keep up. What set the SC Rambler apart was its sheer brashness. AMC didn't try to hide the car's purpose behind subtle styling or luxury features. Instead, it wore its identity proudly with oversized hood scoops, wild graphics, and Hurst badging that screamed performance. Buyers got a stripped-down interior, a Hurst shifter, and a no-nonsense approach to speed. It was not about refinement, it was about making a statement at the drag strip and on Main Street alike. The 1969 Hurst SC Rambler became a cult favorite because it represented the underdog spirit of AMC. While Ford, Chrysler, and General Motors had deeper pockets and more resources, AMC managed to build a compact muscle car that punched far above its weight. Against Ferrari, the SC Rambler embodied pure American grit, bold, loud, unapologetic, and fast enough to make the exotic imports nervous when the lights went green. Number 22, 1968 Pontiac Firebird 400 HO Ram Air Second. The 1968 Pontiac Firebird 400 high-output Ram Air Second was a true sleeper in the muscle car wars, often overshadowed by its GTO sibling, yet packing performance that rivaled the very best of Detroit. Pontiac engineers gave the Firebird a lightweight F-body platform and dropped in a 400 cubic inch V8 tuned for serious street and strip performance. The Ram Air Second upgrade brought freer breathing cylinder heads, a hotter camshaft, and better flowing exhaust manifolds, all combining to unleash far more than the conservative 340 horsepower rating suggested. On the drag strip, the Ram Air Second Firebird was a revelation. Road tests at the time showed quarter-mile runs around 13.6 seconds at 106 miles per hour, numbers that placed it ahead of many Chevelles, Chargers, and Mustangs of the day. Against Ferrari, the Firebird's brute torque advantage meant a decisive edge in a straight-line contest. Ferraris such as the 275 GTB or the 330 GTC might have been built for road racing finesse, but when measured 1/4 mile at a time, the Pontiac Firebird could leave them staring at its taillights. The Firebird Ram Air Second also had the benefit of subtlety. Unlike the more flamboyant GTO Judge or the over-the-top SC Rambler, the Firebird wore clean lines and understated muscle. Buyers could order it with minimal exterior flash, making it the kind of car that could blend in during the day but dominate on the strip at night. Inside, it offered a driver-focused cockpit and plenty of options, from performance gearing to heavy-duty suspensions that gave it an edge when hustled down a straight line. The 1968 Pontiac Firebird 400 Ram Air Second showed just how potent Pontiac's engineering had become in the late 60s. It wasn't the loudest or flashiest muscle car of its time, but in raw acceleration, it was devastating. Against Ferrari, it stood as proof that America's pony cars weren't just stylish, they were brutally effective machines capable of humbling European exotics where it mattered most. Number 21, 1969 Pontiac GTO Judge Ram Air Fourth. The 1969 Pontiac GTO Judge, equipped with the Ram Air Fourth engine, represented the peak of Pontiac's muscle car performance before government regulations and insurance crackdowns began to tame the era. The GTO had already established itself as one of the founding fathers of the muscle car movement, but the Judge trim pushed the boundaries further with aggressive styling and even more potent hardware under the hood. The Ram Air Fourth engine was a 400 cubic inch V8 rated at 370 horsepower, though actual output was higher. It featured special cylinder heads, a high-lift camshaft, aluminum intake manifold, and free-breathing exhaust manifolds. This combination gave it a screaming power band that loved to rev, unlike many torque-heavy big blocks of the time. In quarter-mile runs, magazine tests showed the Judge Ram Air Force posting times around 13.7 seconds at about 104 miles per hour, which placed it squarely in the territory of Dodge, Hemis, and Chevrolet Copo cars. Against Ferraris of the late 1960s, which often clocked times well into the 15-second range, the Judge was brutally quick. The Judge was also about attitude. With its carousel red paint, bold side stripes, rear spoiler, and distinctive callouts, it made sure no one mistook it for an ordinary GTO. Inside, drivers were treated to a cockpit that balanced comfort with performance features, such as the hurst shifter and heavy-duty suspension setups that gave the Judge more bite off the line. It was a car that demanded attention, both visually and mechanically. For Pontiac, the 1969 GTO Judge Ram Air Force was a statement piece, showing that the brand could compete not only with Chevrolet and Dodge, but also humiliate European exotics in raw acceleration. It wasn't about refinement or pedigree, it was about sheer American horsepower. In the quarter mile, it proved that Pontiac's slogan of "The Great One" wasn't just advertising hype. Number 20. 1966 Shelby Cobra 427. The 1966 Shelby Cobra 427 was the ultimate expression of Carroll Shelby's dream to take a lightweight British sports car and infuse it with unapologetic American muscle. Shelby had already built a reputation with earlier small-block Cobras, but the big-block 427 cubic-inch Ford side-oiler V8 turned the car into a barely tamed monster. Officially rated around 485 horsepower, real-world figures often exceeded 500, giving the Cobra acceleration numbers that bordered on terrifying. Weighing barely over 2,000 pounds thanks to its compact aluminum body, the Cobra 427 could launch from 0 to 60 miles per hour in just over 4 seconds. On the quarter mile, it consistently clocked times around 12.2 seconds at nearly 118 miles per hour, performance numbers that even Ferraris of the 1960s couldn't dream of matching. A Ferrari 275 GTB, for example, was considered a marvel of engineering, yet it often ran quarter miles in the 15-second range. Against the Cobra, it didn't stand a chance in a straight-line duel. But the Cobra was more than just raw speed. It was a symbol of American ingenuity and audacity. Shelby didn't care about European tradition or refinement. He cared about building the fastest, most fearsome machine possible, and the Cobra embodied that philosophy. With its wide stance, flared fenders, and aggressive stance, the Cobra looked as brutal as it performed. A car that radiated danger before the engine even roared to life. The 1966 Shelby Cobra 427 has since become one of the most iconic muscle-bred sports cars in history. It blurred the line between street car and race car, and in doing so, it completely embarrassed exotic competitors that cost far more. Against Ferrari, the Cobra didn't just compete, it dominated, proving that American horsepower and simplicity could rewrite the rules of performance forever. Number 19. 1968 Shelby GT 500 KR 428. The 1968 Shelby GT 500 KR, known proudly as the King of the Road, was Carroll Shelby's boldest Mustang yet, combining aggressive styling with Ford's brand new 428 cubic-inch Cobra Jet V8. Rated at a modest 335 horsepower, this engine was deliberately underrated for insurance reasons, but in reality, it delivered well over 400 horses and immense torque across the power band. This transformed the GT 500 KR into a machine capable of outmuscling nearly any street rival of its era. When tested in period, the GT 500 KR posted quarter-mile times in the high 13-second range, often around 13.9 seconds at just over 103 miles per hour. For a car tipping the scales at nearly 3,800 pounds and offering plenty of luxury features, those numbers were remarkable. Ferraris of the same period, such as the 330 GTC, typically needed well over 15 seconds to complete the quarter mile, which meant the Shelby could leave even the most refined Italian exotics watching its taillights vanish. It was raw, unapologetic proof that American horsepower could flatten pedigree when measured 1/4 mile at a time. The GT 500 KR was not just about speed, it was about presence. With its long fiberglass hood, scoops, aggressive front fascia, and Shelby badging, it carried a visual authority that few cars could match. Inside, drivers enjoyed a full complement of comfort features and stylish touches that reminded them this was not just a bare-bones drag racer, it was a muscle car with class. This blend of refinement and ferocity made the King of the Road name more than just a marketing slogan, it was a challenge to all comers. The 1968 Shelby GT 500 KR 428 became one of the most coveted Shelbys of the decade because it perfectly balanced brute strength with showmanship. Against Ferrari, it proved that you didn't need hand-built craftsmanship or a racing heritage to dominate. You just needed American displacement, attitude, and Carroll Shelby's knack for turning Mustangs into legends. Number 18. 1969 Ford Mustang Boss 429. The 1969 Ford Mustang Boss 429 was one of the rarest and most exotic muscle cars ever to roll out of Detroit, created not primarily for the street, but to homologate Ford's new engine for NASCAR. To meet the racing requirement, Ford had to produce a limited run of street cars, and thus the Boss 429 Mustang was born. At its heart was a semi-Hemi 429 cubic inch V8, conservatively rated at 375 horsepower, but in reality producing well over 500 in properly tuned form. The Boss 429 was not an ordinary Mustang. To shoehorn the massive engine into the pony car's engine bay, Ford contracted Car Craft to extensively modify the chassis, relocating shock towers and redesigning the front suspension. This gave the car an almost hand-built character, and the result was one of the most unique Mustangs ever made. While its street gearing and weight limited quarter-mile performance and stock trim, most tests recorded about 14 seconds flat at 100 miles per hour. With minor tuning and traction upgrades, these cars could dip into the mid-13s. Against Ferraris of the late 1960s, which typically ran in the 15-second range, the Boss 429 still had the clear advantage in a drag race. The car's personality was intimidating. With its wide stance, large functional hood scoop, and discreet Boss 429 callouts, it radiated menace without being flashy. Inside, it was understated compared to some rivals, with a focus on performance rather than luxury, though buyers still had access to comfort options. The Boss 429 was less about straight-line bragging rights and more about engineering pedigree. It carried the same DNA that helped Ford dominate NASCAR's superspeedways. The 1969 Ford Mustang Boss 429 remains a muscle car legend because of its rarity, engineering significance, and untapped potential. On the street, it was already capable of embarrassing Ferrari in the quarter mile. But its true purpose was to prove that Ford could build an engine to dominate the world's fastest tracks, making the Boss 429 one of the most desirable Mustangs ever created. Number 17. 1969 Dodge Super Bee 440 6-pack, a 12. The 1969 Dodge Super Bee 440 6-pack, coded as the A12 package, was one of the purest expressions of Mopar muscle, raw, affordable, and built to win at the drag strip. Dodge created the Super Bee as a budget-friendly performance machine, but the A12 option transformed it into something far more dangerous. At its core was Chrysler's legendary 440 cubic inch Magnum V8, topped with 3 Holley 2-barrel carburetors, the famous 6-pack setup that boosted output to a conservative 390 horsepower. In reality, the car delivered closer to 420 horsepower with mountains of torque that could shred tires at will. 0. 5. The A12 package was more than just an engine upgrade. Buyers also received a fiberglass lift-off hood with massive scoop, heavy-duty suspension, a beefed-up transmission, and a 4.1 rear axle ratio. This combination made the Super B one of the quickest showroom stock muscle cars of its day. In magazine tests, the A12 consistently posted quarter-mile times around 12.9 seconds at 111 miles per hour, numbers that humiliated Ferraris of the late 1960s. A Ferrari 275 GTB or even the 365 GT 2+2 would have been solidly beaten, proving that Mopar's working-class muscle could outrun Europe's aristocratic exotics. Visually, the Super B A12 carried an unmistakable drag strip aura. Its matte black liftoff hood with hood pins made no pretense of subtlety, while the aggressive stance and wide redline tires declared its purpose loudly. Unlike many muscle cars, this Dodge wasn't about luxury or refinement, it was about intimidation and straight-line dominance. Inside, it was basic, functional, and free of unnecessary frills, keeping the focus entirely on performance. The 1969 Dodge Super B 440 six-pack proved that muscle didn't need to be expensive to be devastatingly fast. It embodied the no-nonsense spirit of Mopar, affordable power, rugged engineering, and the ability to smoke Ferraris without breaking a sweat. At the drag strip, it was pure American thunder, leaving no doubt that brute force and displacement could outshine exotic pedigree. Number 16. 1969 Dodge Charger Daytona 426 Hemi. The 1969 Dodge Charger Daytona was one of the most outrageous and unforgettable muscle cars ever produced, created with a singular purpose: to dominate NASCAR. To homologate the car for competition, Dodge built just over 500 street-legal versions, making the Daytona both rare and highly sought after. Its aerodynamic nose cone, pop-up headlights, and towering rear wing weren't just for show. They were designed through wind tunnel testing to slice through the air on high-speed tracks. Beneath the skin, the Daytona packed Mopar's ultimate weapon, the 426 cubic inch Hemi V8, conservatively rated at 425 horsepower. On the drag strip, the Charger Daytona Hemi was capable of quarter-mile runs in the mid-13-second range, typically around 13.5 seconds at 105 miles per hour. That might not sound as quick as some lighter muscle cars, but for a nearly 4,000-pound aerodynamic beast, it was still more than enough to embarrass Ferraris of the late 1960s. Italian exotics such as the Ferrari 365 GT 2+2 or even the vaunted 275 GTB often lag behind, unable to match the raw torque of the Hemi. In a straight-line contest, the Daytona had no trouble smoking Europe's finest. Yet the Charger Daytona's true claim to fame was its top speed. It was the first American car to break the 200-mile-per-hour barrier on a closed course, a milestone that sent shockwaves through the racing world. That aerodynamic wing and extended nose gave it stability that other muscle cars lacked, making it as effective on NASCAR ovals as it was intimidating on the street. Its dramatic looks turned heads everywhere, cementing it as one of the most visually iconic cars of the decade. The 1969 Dodge Charger Daytona 426 Hemi was more than a muscle car, it was an engineering revolution. Built to conquer racing and equally lethal on the drag strip, it proved that American innovation could not only outrun Ferrari, but could also completely redefine the standards of speed. Number 15. 1968 Dodge Charger RT 426 Hemi. The 1968 Dodge Charger RT with the legendary 426 Hemi engine was one of the most feared street cars of its time, combining aggressive styling with overwhelming power. The redesigned second-generation Charger introduced sleek fastback lines, hidden headlights, and muscular proportions that made it an instant icon. When paired with the Hemi, Dodge's most potent power plant, the Charger RT became a true menace both on the street and at the drag strip. The Hemi V8 was conservatively rated at 425 horsepower, but its real output was closer to 470. Backed by dual 4-barrel carburetors and massive torque, it could catapult the Charger's nearly 3,800-pound body through the quarter mile in about 13.5 seconds at just over 105 miles per hour. Car and Driver magazine famously recorded 0 to 60 in 4.8 seconds, an astonishing number for a full-size muscle car of the late 1960s. Compared to Ferraris of the same period, such as the 330 GTC or the 275 GTB, which often hovered in the 15-second quarter-mile bracket, the Charger RT with Hemi power was simply devastating. The Charger RT also had the looks to match its performance. Its sleek Coke bottle styling and hidden headlights gave it an unmistakable road presence, further immortalized by its role in movies like Bullitt. Inside, buyers enjoyed a mix of muscle and comfort, with available bucket seats, a center console, and all the amenities needed to make the Charger a long-distance cruiser as well as a drag strip bruiser. The 1968 Dodge Charger RT 426 Hemi became one of the quintessential Mopar legends, representing the perfect marriage of style, size, and unrelenting horsepower. Against Ferrari, it embodied the American philosophy of muscle, big engines, straight-line dominance, and the ability to overwhelm exotic competitors with raw power and speed. Few cars of the era struck fear at a stoplight, like a Hemi Charger waiting for the green. Number 14, 1969 Plymouth Roadrunner, 446 barrel, a 12. The 1969 Plymouth Roadrunner 446 barrel, known by its A12 option code, was a bare-knuckle muscle car built to dominate the quarter mile at a price the average buyer could afford. Plymouth had introduced the Roadrunner just a year earlier as a no-frills, budget-friendly performance machine, but the A12 package took things to the extreme. At its heart was Chrysler's 440 cubic inch V8 fitted with 3 Holley 2-barrel carburetors, creating the now famous 6-barrel setup. Officially rated at 390 horsepower, the real figure was closer to 420, with torque that could overwhelm the skinny factory tires in an instant. The A12 Roadrunner came with a lift-off fiberglass hood, complete with a massive functional scoop that left no doubt about its intentions. Dodge engineers fitted the car with heavy-duty suspension, a Dana rear axle with 4.1 gears, and mandatory performance upgrades to handle the punishment of drag racing. In stock form, magazines recorded the Roadrunner A12, blasting the quarter mile in 12.9 seconds at over 111 miles per hour, making it the quickest true production muscle car of 1969. In comparison, Ferraris of the era, such as the 275 GTB or the 365 GT, simply could not compete, often requiring 15 seconds or more in the same distance. Despite its raw speed, the A12 Roadrunner stayed true to its roots as a working-class hero. The interior was stripped down, with vinyl bench seats and few luxuries, keeping costs low and weight manageable. Priced under $3,800, it was a car built for young enthusiasts who wanted maximum performance without paying for unnecessary extras. Its cartoon Roadrunner badging and beep-beep horn only added to its playful personality, even as it embarrassed far more expensive machinery on the drag strip. The 1969 Plymouth Roadrunner 446 barrel a 12 remains one of the most legendary muscle cars ever built. It embodied the muscle car philosophy perfectly: simple, affordable, brutally fast, and able to humiliate European exotics like Ferrari with nothing more than American cubic inches and attitude. Number 13, 1969 Chevrolet Chevelle COPO 427. The 1969 Chevrolet Chevelle COPO 427 was the result of enthusiasts and dealers bending corporate rules to deliver the performance that customers demanded. General Motors had a policy that restricted mid-size cars like the Chevelle from receiving engines larger than 400 cubic inches. But through the central office production order system, originally intended for fleet and special equipment orders, dealers like Don Yenko managed to slip in the massive L72 427 cubic inch big block V8 into the Chevelle. The L72 was rated at 425 horsepower, but just like other GM big blocks of the era, its real output was significantly higher. Backed by a forged steel crankshaft, 4-bolt mains, and high-flow cylinder heads, this was an engine built for serious racing. When paired with a heavy-duty Muncie 4-speed or a turbo 400 automatic and 4.1 positive traction rear gears, the Copo Chevelle could tear through the quarter mile in 13.3 seconds at over 108 miles per hour in stock form. With headers, slicks, and minor tuning, many owners easily dipped into the low 12s. In comparison, Ferraris of the late 1960s often struggled in the mid-14 or even 15-second range at the strip. That meant a well-driven Copo Chevelle wasn't just faster, it was decisively quicker, leaving Italian exotics behind in a cloud of tire smoke. The Chevelle's ability to embarrass cars costing 4 or 5 times as much cemented its reputation as a working-class hero of the muscle era. Stylistically, the 1969 Chevelle carried clean, aggressive lines with just enough muscle car presence to let rivals know it meant business. The Copo cars were deliberately understated, often lacking flashy trim or graphics, which only added to their sleeper appeal. Buyers got a car that looked like a normal Chevelle but had the heart of a drag strip terror lurking beneath the hood. The 1969 Chevrolet Chevelle COPO 427 remains one of the most celebrated muscle cars because it represents the perfect blend of stealth and power. Against Ferrari, it embodied Detroit's rebellious spirit, sidestepping corporate red tape to unleash brute American horsepower that could leave Europe's finest staring at taillights. Number 12. 1969 Chevrolet Yenko Nova 427. The 1969 Chevrolet Yenko Nova 427 was one of the most unhinged and dangerous muscle cars ever unleashed on the public. Dealer tuner Don Yenko, already famous for his Camaro and Chevelle conversions, decided to push the limits further by stuffing Chevrolet's mighty L72 427 cubic inch V8 into the lightweight compact Nova body. The result was a car that looked almost ordinary from the outside, but packed the performance of a full-fledged drag racer. The L72 Big Block was officially rated at 425 horsepower, but in reality, it delivered closer to 450. In a car that weighed only about 3,000 pounds, that power-to-weight ratio was nothing short of explosive. On slicks, the Yenko Nova could rocket down the quarter mile in just 10.9 seconds, and even on street tires, it was easily capable of mid-11-second runs. Those numbers put it leagues ahead of Ferraris of the late 1960s, which typically hovered around 15 seconds in the quarter mile. For a fraction of the price, the Yenko Nova was obliterating Europe's most exotic machinery. The Yenko Nova's appearance was deceptively tame compared to its monstrous performance. With minimal badging, a clean body style, and only subtle Yenko graphics, it carried a sleeper persona that made it all the more dangerous. On the street, unsuspecting rivals often underestimated it, only to be left choking on tire smoke as the Nova disappeared. Inside, it was no luxury cruiser. Basic vinyl interiors and a straightforward layout kept the focus entirely on speed. Produced in tiny numbers, reportedly fewer than 40, this car became one of the rarest and most legendary of all Yenko creations. The 1969 Chevrolet Yenko Nova 427 was a pure hot rod spirit given factory backing, a car that was barely street legal yet totally unstoppable in a straight line. Against Ferrari, it was an American middle finger to refinement and tradition, proving that sometimes brute force alone was enough to win. Number 11. 1969 Chevrolet Corvette ZL1 427. The 1969 Chevrolet Corvette ZL1 427 was one of the rarest and most ferocious muscle cars ever offered. A machine so extreme that only 2 examples were built for public consumption. Conceived as a factory race car thinly disguised as a street vehicle, the ZL1 package paired the already formidable L88 Corvette with an all-aluminum 427 cubic inch V8 designed for competition use. Officially, Chevrolet rated the ZL1 at 430 horsepower, but actual output was well north of 500, with some dyno sheets showing over 550 horses. The ZL1's lightweight aluminum block and heads shed nearly 100 pounds compared to the iron L88 engine, improving weight distribution and acceleration. Period tests indicated the ZL1 Corvette could storm through the quarter mile in just over 12 seconds at 116 miles per hour on drag tires, a figure unheard of for a street car at the time. With tuning, these cars could easily dip into the 11s, leaving Ferraris of the same era, often stuck in the mid-15-second range, completely humiliated. The ZL1's combination of cutting-edge, lightweight engineering and raw big block power was unmatched. Styling-wise, the ZL1 looked like any other 1969 Corvette, which was part of its charm. To the casual observer, it was simply another sleek American sports car, but under the hood lurked one of the most potent engines ever offered by a U.S. manufacturer. Buyers had to pay a staggering premium for the ZL1 package, almost doubling the cost of a base Corvette, making it a nearly unobtainable dream car in its day. The 1969 Chevrolet Corvette ZL1 427 stands today as one of the ultimate expressions of American muscle and ingenuity. Against Ferrari, it was an unstoppable force, showing that Detroit could produce a car with exotic-level technology and blistering performance at a fraction of the cost. In the annals of muscle car history, the ZL1 Corvette remains a mythical figure, rare, devastatingly fast, and capable of making Europe's finest seem painfully slow. Number 10. 1969 Chevrolet Camaro ZL1 427. The 1969 Chevrolet Camaro ZL1 427 was a car so radical that even seasoned muscle car fans couldn't believe Chevrolet actually built it. Born from the Copo program and intended primarily for drag racing, the ZL1 Camaro was fitted with an all-aluminum version of the 427 cubic inch big block V8. This lightweight racing engine was derived directly from Chevrolet's Can-Am program, making the ZL1 less of a street car and more of a factory-delivered race car in disguise. Officially, Chevrolet rated the ZL1 engine at 430 horsepower, but dyno tests revealed actual output closer to 500. Combined with the Camaro's relatively light weight, the car was a rocket. In showroom stock form, it could run low 13-second quarter miles at over 110 miles per hour. With drag slicks and mild tuning, however, ZL1 Camaros regularly turned quarter-mile times around 11.6 seconds at 122 miles per hour, making them nearly untouchable. Against Ferrari, the comparison wasn't even close. While Italian exotics impressed with craftsmanship and handling, none could match the sheer acceleration of the ZL1. Only 69 examples of the ZL1 Camaro were built, and they came at an astronomical price for the era, nearly doubling the cost of a standard Camaro SS. This made them rare, but also ensured that those who bought one were serious about performance. The ZL1 package included not only the monster engine, but also heavy-duty driveline components, cooling upgrades, and reinforced suspension to handle the stress of competitive racing. The 1969 Chevrolet Camaro ZL1 427 has since become one of the most legendary muscle cars of all time. It was the purest expression of Detroit's obsession with quarter-mile domination, a car that could roll off a showroom floor and immediately humble Ferraris, costing several times as much. In the muscle car wars of the late 1960s, nothing made a louder statement than a ZL1 Camaro, leaving an exotic sports car behind in a trail of rubber smoke. Number 9. 1963 Chevrolet Impala Z11 427. The 1963 Chevrolet Impala Z11 427 was one of the rarest and most formidable full-size muscle machines ever to leave Detroit. Created specifically for drag racing, the Z11 was a lightweight version of Chevrolet's popular Impala, built to take on Chrysler's Max Wedges and Ford's Thunderbolts in NHRA competition. Only 57 examples were produced, making it a true factory hot rod with exclusivity baked into its DNA. At the heart of the Z11 was a special 427 cubic inch W Series V8, a stroked and bored evolution of the legendary 409. Chevrolet rated it at 430 horsepower, but actual performance was far more impressive thanks to high compression internals, dual 4-barrel carburetors, and lightweight components. The engine was paired with a close ratio 4-speed manual, heavy-duty rear axle, and drag-ready gearing, making the Z11 one of the fiercest straight-line performers of its day. Chevrolet stripped nearly 200 pounds out of the Impala by fitting aluminum front fenders, hood, and bumpers, along with thinner windows and a minimalist interior. This weight reduction gave the massive, full-size car surprising agility for its class. On the drag strip, properly tuned Z11 Impalas were capable of quarter-mile times in the high 10 to low 11-second range at well over 120 miles per hour. Compared to Ferraris of the early 1960s, which often struggled to reach the mid-15-second bracket, the Impala Z11 was in an entirely different league. Visually, the Z11 looked much like a standard Impala Supersport, which only added to its mystique. To the untrained eye, it was just another family-sized Chevrolet, but those who knew recognized the subtle cues, such as its unique cowl induction hood. It was a true sleeper, an unassuming giant that could obliterate European exotics without breaking a sweat. The 1963 Chevrolet Impala Z11 427 remains a legend because it showcased the height of factory-backed ingenuity. Against Ferrari, it was not just faster, it was proof that American automakers could turn even their full-size family cars into quarter-mile assassins. Number 8. 1962 Pontiac Catalina 421 Super Duty. The 1962 Pontiac Catalina 421 Super Duty was one of the most dominant factory drag machines of the early muscle era, and it cemented Pontiac's reputation as a serious performance contender. Built in limited numbers for racers, the Super Duty package transformed the otherwise full-size Catalina into a weapon capable of embarrassing lighter and more exotic cars. Under the hood sat the new 421 cubic inch V8, specially tuned with high compression internals, dual 4-barrel carburetors, and heavy-duty components throughout. Pontiac rated the engine at 375 to 405 horsepower, but in reality, the numbers were higher, making the car an instant terror on the drag strip. To further improve performance, Pontiac offered lightweight parts, including aluminum fenders, hood, and bumpers, shaving crucial pounds from the big Catalina's body. With its stripped-down interior and race-oriented setup, the Super Duty Catalina was far from a luxury cruiser. Instead, it was designed to go fast in a straight line, and it excelled at that purpose. In proper tune, these cars could run the quarter mile in the mid-12-second range at over 115 miles per hour, which in 1962 made them nearly unbeatable. Ferraris of the same era, such as the 250 GT Lusso, simply had no chance when staged next to a Catalina Super Duty. Visually, the Catalina Super Duty gave little away to casual observers. To most, it looked like a standard Pontiac, albeit with a slightly more purposeful stance and subtle cues. But those who knew could recognize the aluminum body panels and unique badging that identified it as one of Pontiac's factory hot rods. It was a car built for racers, not commuters, and that exclusivity only added to its mystique. The 1962 Pontiac Catalina 421 Super Duty was a landmark in American muscle history. It proved that even a full-size sedan could be turned into a drag strip assassin, and it gave Pontiac the credibility it needed to dominate the performance conversation in the early 1960s. Against Ferrari, it showcased brute force over finesse, delivering a clear message that American engineering could humble the world's finest with raw displacement and determination. Number 7. 1963 Pontiac Tempest Super Duty 421 05. The 1963 Pontiac Tempest Super Duty 421 was one of the rarest and wildest muscle cars ever created, a car that proved Pontiac's willingness to experiment in the pursuit of drag strip dominance. Only 6 of these factory specials were built, making them virtually unobtainable even when new. What set them apart was not just the powerhouse engine, but the fact that Pontiac chose to install it into the compact Tempest body, creating a lightweight monster that few competitors could touch. At the heart of this beast was the 421 cubic inch Super Duty V8, fitted with high compression internals, a radical camshaft, and dual 4-barrel carburetors. Rated conservatively at over 400 horsepower, the engine's true output was much higher, and paired with the Tempest's relatively low weight, it turned the car into a drag strip terror. Quarter-mile times in the low 12-second range at speeds exceeding 118 miles per hour were recorded, putting it among the fastest factory cars of the early 1960s. Against Ferrari's elite exotics of the era, which were struggling to break into the 15-second bracket, the Tempest Super Duty was in a class of its own. What made the Tempest Super Duty especially radical was its drivetrain. Pontiac engineers adapted the Tempest's unusual rear transaxle design to handle the immense torque, creating one of the strangest yet most effective combinations in muscle car history. The lightweight construction, combined with the enormous power, made this compact Pontiac far more dangerous than it appeared. To the casual observer, it looked like just another small Pontiac coupe, but in reality, it was one of the quickest cars ever unleashed by Detroit in that era. The 1963 Pontiac Tempest Super Duty 421 is remembered as a unicorn of the muscle car world. Built in tiny numbers, it was banned soon after by GM's racing restrictions, making its legend even greater. Against Ferrari, it represented the ultimate American sleeper, lightweight, brutally fast, and capable of shocking any exotic that dared to line up against it. Number 6. 1966 Plymouth Satellite 426 Street Hemi. The 1966 Plymouth Satellite 426 Street Hemi marked the first year Chrysler unleashed the legendary Hemi engine in a production street car, making it one of the most pivotal moments in muscle car history. The Satellite, a member of Plymouth's body lineup, looked like a respectable mid-sized car on the surface, but when equipped with the new Street Hemi, it became a game changer. With a massive 426 cubic inch displacement, dual 4-barrel carburetors, and a conservative factory rating of 425 horsepower, the engine was actually capable of far more in real-world output. The Street Hemi was designed as a race engine adapted for the street, retaining its hemispherical combustion chambers and robust bottom end that could withstand extreme stress. In a 1966 Satellite equipped with a 4-speed manual and proper gearing, the car could storm through the quarter mile in about 13.5 seconds at over 104 miles per hour. For its time, that performance was nearly unmatched, leaving Ferraris of the era, like the 330 GTC or the 275 GTB, struggling to keep up. To line up a flashy Italian exotic against what appeared to be a modest Plymouth and then watch the Satellite pull ahead was the essence of muscle car bravado. Visually, the Satellite carried clean, understated styling that hid the menace beneath. It was not festooned with stripes or wings, but rather a straightforward, muscular design that appealed to buyers who valued substance over flash. Inside, the car offered the practicality and space of a family car, making it possible to daily drive a machine that could tear down the quarter-mile faster than many purpose-built sports cars. The 1966 Plymouth Satellite 426 Street Hemi became a symbol of Mopar's no-nonsense approach to performance. It was a car that introduced the world to the street Hemi legend, proving that Chrysler could dominate both drag strips and stoplight duels with raw displacement and engineering brilliance. Against Ferrari, it showed that brute American horsepower could deliver humiliating results to Europe's finest machines. Number 5. 1964 Dodge 330 Ramcharger 426 Max Wedge. The 1964 Dodge 330 Ramcharger 426 Max Wedge was one of the fiercest drag machines of its time, built specifically to dominate the quarter mile and strike fear into anyone lined up in the other lane. Dodge engineers created the Max Wedge program to wring every ounce of performance out of Chrysler's big block V8, and the 426 cubic inch version introduced in 1964 was the most potent yet. The Stage 3rd Max Wedge featured a cross-ram intake with dual Carter carburetors, high-compression pistons, and aggressive camshafts, pushing the factory rating to 425 horsepower. But in reality, with careful tuning, output climbed much higher, and racers often coaxed over 500 horsepower from these engines. The lightweight Dodge 330 body gave the engine a perfect platform, creating a car that could rocket down the strip in the mid-11-second range at speeds well above 120 miles per hour. For the early 1960s, those were astonishing numbers, far beyond anything a Ferrari could hope to achieve in a straight-line contest. What made the Ramcharger truly intimidating was its no-nonsense presentation. It wasn't loaded with fancy trim or luxury features. This was a purpose-built drag car with just enough comfort to make it street legal. Many buyers used them exclusively for competition, and Dodge even offered lightweight versions with aluminum front ends and stripped-down interiors. While Ferraris of the era emphasized beauty, craftsmanship, and road course agility, the Ramcharger embodied raw American muscle, using brute force to crush its rivals 1/4 mile at a time. The 1964 Dodge 330 Ramcharger 426 Max Wedge represents a turning point in Detroit's obsession with performance. It was a factory-backed declaration that Dodge intended to rule the drag strip, and in doing so, it built a machine that could humiliate some of the world's most prestigious cars without breaking a sweat. Against Ferrari, it was the ultimate example of American torque triumphing over European finesse. Number 4. 1964 Ford Fairlane Thunderbolt 427. The 1964 Ford Fairlane Thunderbolt was not just a muscle car, it was a factory-built drag racer disguised as a mid-size family car. Ford created the Thunderbolt as part of its effort to dominate NHRA Superstock racing, and only about 100 cars were produced, making it both exclusive and purpose-built. From the outside, it still resembled the ordinary Fairlane, but every detail underneath was engineered with a single goal in mind: to win at the drag strip. The heart of the Thunderbolt was the 427 cubic inch high-riser V8, conservatively rated at 425 horsepower but delivering much more in actual performance. With dual 4-barrel carburetors, a high-rise intake manifold, and free-flowing headers, the engine unleashed explosive acceleration. To keep weight down, Ford fitted the Thunderbolt with fiberglass hoods, fenders, doors, and even plexiglass windows, dropping its curb weight dramatically compared to standard Fairlanes. On the drag strip, the results were devastating. In NHRA trim, the Thunderbolt consistently ran quarter miles in 11.6 seconds at over 124 miles per hour. For 1964, those times were virtually untouchable, putting the Thunderbolt ahead of Chrysler's Max Wedges and far beyond anything Ferrari could hope to achieve. At a time when Ferraris like the 250 GT, Lusso, or even the vaunted 250 GTO struggled to break 15 seconds in the quarter, the Thunderbolt was nearly 4 seconds quicker. Visually, the Thunderbolt's plain fairlane styling made it a true sleeper to anyone who didn't know what lurked under its hood. The only giveaways were its teardrop fiberglass hood scoop, lightweight bumpers, and small Thunderbolt script. Inside, it was stripped of luxury, fitted instead with racing seats and essential equipment only, all in the name of speed. The 1964 Ford Fairlane Thunderbolt remains one of the most legendary factory drag cars ever built. It represented Ford's uncompromising pursuit of performance, delivering a car that could embarrass exotic Ferraris while still being sold through a dealership. Against Ferrari, it was the ultimate proof that American ingenuity and brute force could rewrite the record books 1/4 mile at a time. Number 3. 1965 Plymouth Belvedere A9 9426 Hemi. The 1965 Plymouth Belvedere A9 9426 Hemi was a turning point in the history of American muscle cars, marking the moment when Chrysler's legendary Hemi engine first reached the drag strip in factory-built form. Built specifically for competition, the A990 Belvedere was stripped down, purpose-built, and brutally fast. It was not a car designed for comfort or luxury, it was created for one thing: to win races. The A990 package came with the brand new 426 cubic inch race Hemi, featuring hemispherical combustion chambers, dual 4-barrel carburetors, and a conservative rating of 425 horsepower. In reality, these engines produce closer to 500 horsepower in stock trim, and with basic tuning, they unleashed even more. To handle the power, Plymouth fitted the Belvedere with a beefed-up driveline and drag-ready suspension. Weight was reduced by using aluminum front fenders, hood, and bumpers, along with lightweight bucket seats and minimal interior trim. This gave the car a race-ready curb weight under 3,300 pounds. On the strip, the A990 Belvedere was devastating. In 1965, these cars became the first factory stock machines to break into the 10-second bracket with some running consistent 10-second quarter miles at around 130 miles per hour. That kind of performance left Ferraris of the mid-1960s, such as the 330 GTC or even the iconic 250 GTO, in absolute shock, since those European machines could not come close in straight-line acceleration. Visually, the Belvedere A990 looked modest compared to its performance, with clean lines and understated styling that hid the fury beneath. But racers and enthusiasts knew exactly what it was: a lightweight, drag strip assassin born from Detroit's obsession with quarter-mile supremacy. The 1965 Plymouth Belvedere A9 9426 Hemi solidified Chrysler's dominance in factory drag racing and gave birth to the legend of the street Hemi that would soon follow. Against Ferrari, it proved that brute American engineering and sheer displacement could obliterate hand-built European refinement in a contest of raw speed. Number 2. 1968 Plymouth Hurst HEMI Barracuda B29. The 1968 Plymouth Hurst HEMI Barracuda, coded as B29, was one of the most extreme factory drag cars ever produced, built in such limited numbers that it became an instant legend. Created for NHRA Superstock competition, only about 50 units were made, and each one was assembled with the help of Hurst Performance to ensure it was as light and fast as possible. This was not a car meant for comfortable cruising, it was delivered ready to dominate the quarter mile. Under its lightweight body sat Chrysler's most fearsome power plant, the 426 cubic inch race Hemi. Rated at 425 horsepower, but known to produce well over 500 in stock form, the Hemi was a torque-rich monster that could propel the stripped-down Barracuda like nothing else. With acid-dip body panels, thin glass, and aluminum parts, the B29 tipped the scales at far less than a standard Barracuda, amplifying the engine's devastating power-to-weight ratio. On the strip, the Hurst Hemi Barracuda's performance was astonishing. Straight from the factory, these cars were capable of low 10-second quarter-mile runs at around 130 miles per hour, making them among the quickest production-based vehicles of the entire 1960s. To put that in perspective, Ferraris of the same era, like the 275 GTB or the 365 GT, could barely crack the 15-second range. Against a B-29 Barracuda, the Italian exotics never stood a chance once the Christmas tree lights went green. Visually, the car looked plain compared to its extraordinary performance, with only subtle cues giving away its true nature. Inside, creature comforts were eliminated in favor of saving weight, leaving a bare-bones cockpit that was all business. These cars were sold with the clear understanding that they were for drag racing only, and many came with disclaimers warning buyers that they were not intended for daily driving. The 1968 Plymouth Hurst HEMI Barracuda B29 stands as one of the wildest factory experiments in muscle car history. It embodied the essence of Detroit's horsepower wars, taking a compact car, stuffing it with the biggest, baddest engine available, and stripping away everything else in the name of speed. Against Ferrari, it wasn't just a competitor, it was a destroyer, proving that raw American muscle could run circles around Europe's most celebrated exotics in the quarter mile. Number 1. 1968 Dodge Hurst Hemi Dart LO23. The 1968 Dodge Hurst HEMI Dart, coded LO23, was the most outrageous and uncompromising factory drag car of the muscle era, a machine so extreme it was sold with a disclaimer stating it was for drag racing use only. Dodge built fewer than 80 of these cars, each one modified by Hurst Performance to shed weight and maximize acceleration. With their stripped interiors, fiberglass body panels, and plexiglass windows, these darts were brutally single-minded weapons built to conquer the quarter mile. At the core of the LO23 was Chrysler's 426 cubic inch race Hemi, the most feared engine of its day. Rated at 4 to 25 horsepower but producing closer to 550 in reality, the Hemi was paired with either a 4-speed manual or a heavy-duty torque flight automatic. Engineers crammed this massive power plant into the compact A-body Dart, creating one of the most devastating power-to-weight ratios of the decade. The results were staggering. In essentially stock trim, Hemi Darts could rip through the quarter mile in the low 10-second range at speeds of around 130 miles per hour. With slight tuning, they dipped into the 9-second bracket, performance levels that bordered on professional drag racing territory. No Ferrari of the 1960s, from the elegant 275 GTB to the mighty 365 GT, came remotely close. While Ferrari focused on road course finesse and high-revving engines, the Hemi Dart simply obliterated the opposition in a straight-line contest. Visually, the LO23 darts were raw and unapologetic. They wore minimal badging, carried functional hood scoops, and had interiors stripped of anything unnecessary. Even sound deadening and rear seats were deleted to save weight. These cars were never about comfort or style, they were about terrifying speed. The 1968 Dodge Hurst HEMI Dart LO23 remains the ultimate factory drag car of the muscle era. Against Ferrari, it was not just faster, it was devastating. A quarter-mile assassin that proved Detroit could build a car so extreme that it redefined what factory performance meant. It was the king of the drag strip, and in the world of straight-line acceleration, nothing from Italy could touch it.